Hey guys, it's Ruben. Help find the others. So I want to thank you for everyone who's reached out to me, either through emails or YouTube comments. It's very nice to hear from everyone. I'm kind of blown away by how much response I've had to my videos. I really didn't expect much at all, and it's just kind of cool. So I want to keep spreading the love. So make sure, when if you like these videos, to give a thumbs up and subscribe, and that just helps it, go out more and more people see it. So let's keep the train rolling there. Um, so my other videos were like trip report, story kind of things, which I'm a better storyteller than I am like trying to just ramble and get a point across. But today I kind of just wanted to like get this idea I had in my head down on video and to see how it goes. Um, so, well, I had this thought while I was in a sensory deprivation flotation tank. I don't know. A lot of people probably know what that is, but in case you haven't, it's like a tank that's full of Epsom salt water and you float in it. You can't sink. Like, even if you couldn't swim, you could use one of these because you just float on top of the water and you feel like weightless. It's pretty cool. But then the lid, you can close the lid and it's pitch black and there's no sound, and it's a pretty cool experience. It can be very relaxing, but it can also be a very good tool to help you like really meditate deeply and block everything out. Some people would use psychedelics in them, and that's awesome. It'd be kind of hard to do unless you own the tank yourself, because like I have a membership with like a place that I can go once a month and go in and whatever. I don't know. That kind of be hard to take a psychedelic and do, but microdosing could be cool. But regardless, I'm in the tank today, and I'm having this thought, and it it kind of expanded on what I want to talk about first, and that is the Stoned Ape Theory. If anyone has ever heard of that, I'm sure a lot of people have, but I'm sure that's also, I'll put it in the title of the video, and I'm sure that's why a lot of people will click on this video. So I'll talk about the Stoned Ape Theory. Um, and the Stoned Ape Theory is an idea from Terrence Mckenna that he talks about in this Food of the Gods. Now, first off, it's not a theory. A theory is a very important a scientific, usually in like physics. Like if you think of theory, you think of Einstein's theory of relativity, and that's the idea that gravity is like a space time fabric, and gravity is like things with bigger mass pull down on the fabric and stuff's attracted to it more. So like it's like a generally accepted but impossible to prove idea that starts out as a hypothesis and is an idea in that field of science. Well, so it should be called the Stoned Ape Hypothesis, which is what Paul Stamets calls it anyway. But for whatever reason, when it comes to internet buzzwords, Terrence McKenna and Stoned Ape Theory are kind of intertwined. So that's how I'll put it, but it's not actually a theory. And a little background on myself. I have, a degree in biology with an emphasis on evolution and organismal studies. So when I came across this idea of Terrence McKenna's, it intrigued me just based on that, because of other things I had thought, involving my knowledge of science with my experience with psychedelic mushrooms. When I read this, the way he puts it in this book is very scientific, even though he wasn't a scientist. I mean, he was a psychonaut and a author and a great speaker and just a great person. But I mean, I don't think he had more than a bachelor's, and he wasn't a scientist. His research involved experiences and not like actual scientific research. His brother was more scientific, but he's also a little less like spacey than Terrence was. I really recommend, along with this book, to get Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss, and that is a book that Dennis McKenna wrote about Terrence and his life. Anyway, that's my background as to like I do have a scientific mind for how evolution works and where humanity has been and where I think we're going and stuff like that. I'm not just regurgitating stuff, from other YouTube videos or whatever. I mean, I do have a background kind of in all this. But what Terrence says is that the missing link, when we talk about the missing link in human evolution, it's because over the course of, I think, 200,000 years, the human brain doubled, and there hasn't been any anthropological evidence to show why. So they say there's a missing link, like another species that we hybridized with, or whatever. That we haven't found the reason. And so what Terrence is saying is the missing link is psilocybin cubensis mushrooms. And the reason he says that is because early humanity started in Africa, and it moved across Africa and came across different, habitats, different foods, different other creatures to coexist with. And at the time when humans had half the size brains that we have now, they lived in the trees. They were smaller. They were, like chimpanzees almost, and hanging from trees and eating bugs and things that are in trees, right? They didn't eat animals, and they didn't really interact with other animals. They got away from them by getting up in the trees. And as they evolved and moved into different habitats for whatever reasons, there's pressures that move populations. If there was a forest fire and they had to get out of the jungle or whatever, they came across the grasslands or the savannas, okay? And here they would have come across a new animal that they had never seen before, and they would follow them around, because these animals would lead them to food that they could eat as well, right? So at the same time, there's a relationship going on between a fungus, the psilocybin cubensis fungus, and these animals, in that the fungus has its spores on the grass, which these animals eat. They poop it out, and the mushroom comes out of their feces, and the spores go out into the grass. Animal eats it, poops it out, and this is the life cycle, okay? Now, as the early humans are following these grass-eating animals around, they're following their poop, right? That's how do you track any animal? You follow its poop. Well, when they find the poop, there's these crazy looking mushrooms coming out of it. Well, when you're a hunter-gatherer and you're in a new habitat, you don't know what you can eat and what you can't. So chances are, if anything's palatable, you're going to eat it. So they would eat these mushrooms. Now, they would have the same experience we have, except while we may eat mushrooms and have this mystical, magical experience, don't you think it's a little muted by the fact that we live in this crazy world of technology where we're surrounded by mystical, magical things all the time that we just take for granted? And that if we weren't so deadened by our reliance on technology and we had that mushroom experience, it would be absolutely mind-blowing. And you would definitely do it again, right? I mean, I don't think any creature would be scared off by that. If you lived and you had a great time, you're going to eat it again. You're going to seek it out, okay? And now, the other thing that he talks about is that not every early human would have come across it. There was probably groups that decided not to chase down these animals, not to follow them. They were scared of them and they went away or whatever. Okay? Well, they wouldn't eat these mushrooms. So you had kind of a split going on of generations of hunter-gatherer tribes that knew of these mushrooms and ate them, and they went on that path, and other ones went on this path, and they didn't eat these mushrooms. Now, there's research that he quotes in here about low doses of mushrooms. So, if you didn't come across a big, huge one, and you just got one and you ate it, which is essentially microdosing, right? You will have several things that would make you have an advantage over someone that didn't, a hunter gatherer that didn't eat these mushrooms, in that you'll have better edge detection with your vision. And I think Terrence calls it chemical binoculars. That when you're relying on your vision to hunt and gather food, you need to see predators. You need to see specific plants that are what you're looking for, and specific ones that you're trying to avoid or that have thorns or whatever. So you're going to have an advantage in natural selection by being a better hunter-gatherer. Also, low doses of psilocybin mushrooms, which I can attest to, increase the libido in males and females, and would lead to more procreation, which also gives you another advantage in natural selection over hunter-gatherers that didn't have these mushrooms. It would give you also an advantage with the reproduction is that often the largest flushes of naturally occurring psilocybin mushrooms are during full moons. Well, also, back in tribal times like that, all the women had their most fertile time at the same time, and that corresponded with the moon, which is at the same time that they would find these mushrooms, which would make them want to procreate, and it started these mushroom orgies, which he says are the basis of religion, which is a pretty challenging idea to come up with, but it makes a lot of sense in that the earliest religious idols that they found of these tribal early human ancestors in Africa were all like mushroom goddesses. And what they would always think is a statue of a penis for a fertility idol actually may be a mushroom. And then also the correlation between the mushroom and the penis and the looking kind of similar, like to early humans, made sense, like, when they were having a mystical experience that, procreation was the way, and it spread the genes of the tribes that were having their DNA altered by these frequent psilocybin experiences. Because the other thing we found out since Terrence wrote this book, and it's something that I feel further solidifies his ideas. One of the things that a researcher in Florida found that's doing research right now on psilocybin is that psilocybin grows brain cells, and they're looking at it as a treatment for chronic the concussion disorder and paralyzed people and everything, because it anybody with brain damage, they're thinking that psilocybin can help regrow their brain cells because it's shown that it grows brain cells. So doesn't that kind of explain the doubling, right? If the group of, or the subset of early human ancestors that were reproducing more and were surviving better because of this mushroom, we're also eating this mushroom that grows brain cells and makes their brain grow, and then they're passing those genes on to their kids and showing them what they can eat, and they eat these mushrooms, and it's this compounding thing that really did catalyze evolution. So that's the Stoned Ape Theory, at least my interpretation of it. I'm sorry if someone thinks I'm wrong or whatever. That's, we can leave a comment, you can email me and whatever. But what I wanted to talk about was my idea. So I'm in this flotation tank and I'm thinking about that, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I totally get it. It all connects. I believed in it before, but I'm like, Terrence is definitely right. The Stoned Ape Hypothesis is accurate, and someone should research it and make it an actual, accepted view of human anthropology. Because it's a fringe kind of concept right now. Well, I had a question. Why? If that mushroom is there, and if it caused all this for humans, and made us from animals into these higher consciousness sentient beings that can construct things and alter molecules and everything, and really harness the power of like physics that was impossible for early human ancestors. Why? Why does it do that? Because the common botanical view of psychedelic plants and psychotropic plants and everything by just total straight botanical researchers is it's just dumb luck. It's chaos. It's just this molecule does this in this part of the brain and it has this experience and it doesn't matter. And it's a total like non-spiritual way of looking at it. What I consider to be the most spiritual experience that a human can have in their lifetime. So I understand why hardcore science only people, only believe in the evidence, why they don't think there's a spiritual reason for psychedelic drugs. But I really think there is. I think it's by design, okay? And so I was thinking about it, and I'm like, well, I think one of the biggest things to take away from a deep psychedelic experience is to come away humble. And humbled by having the realization that it's very naive to think that humans are the highest consciousness that there is in the universe. I just don't think that's the case. We're the highest consciousness beings that we can perceive. And this is much like, a good analogy is like an ant, right? They probably think they're the highest consciousness there is. They don't know or understand that they're around a house that's in a city, there's streets and there's electricity. They don't understand all that. They can't even perceive that. Well, what's to say we're any better than that? What's to say that the reason that space seems so impossibly huge and that space is, impossible for us to move around in without some crazy, scientific advancement? Well, maybe it's that we're very small compared to the next level up on the consciousness ladder, right? And so I start thinking about, like, what would that be to be a higher consciousness? Because we can't even really perceive it, like we think of aliens as like humanoid creatures, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about another being that's on the same level of consciousness as us, just may have evolved in different circumstances or over a longer amount of time or whatever. I'm talking about just a higher consciousness, a god, if you will, because I think that's what, like, the word humanity is put to what I'm explaining is God, is just the next level up, the next being, right? If you're that, well, then you probably have a grasp on at least twice of the grasp of like universal cosmic physics that we have, and to the point where you can just synthesize and make material. You have full control over matter and energy. But what if, because I always say, physics believes there's matter and energy, and that's what makes up the universe. Well, I think there's a third element, and that's spirit. And I think that is not part of science because it's not very detectable, because it's just all encompassing, okay? So what if that's the thing, that the next consciousness up, it still can't synthesize spirit. It can't synthesize consciousness. So what if, much like we take, in the form of agriculture, take and manipulate lower life forms like plants or animals into, an agricultural product that we harvest, something that we can't create ourselves. What if we're an agricultural product? What if our consciousness is being farmed? That, even though it seems like evolution takes so long, what if the entire span of evolution of life on this planet is actually just one season to the next level up? And they start these planets and they create all the life, and then they farm the consciousness to start the next level up. Like their consciousness starts with the end of ours. And I was thinking, if that's the case, and there's these consciousness farmers that are growing us, right, and growing our minds, what if the mushroom is like a fertilizer, and it makes, in agricultural terms, a better tasting fruit that has more shelf life and can sell for more or whatever. What if it makes a better consciousness and it ripens quicker, and that's all that everything is. is we're infantile, even at our highest consciousness of enlightenment and the end of our life or whatever. We're just an infant then, and then it just starts the next ladder, and instead of the idea of reincarnation, of like you come back as different things, what if you're just like always moving up the chain? Your consciousness is just always growing. And yeah, I don't know. That's a crazy idea. Probably be a crazy sci-fi movie. That's all I got. I didn't like write a book on it or anything. It was kind of my expansion on the Stoned Ape Theory from, like I said, Food of the Gods. If you haven't read it, get this book. But it was kind of my answer to why the Stoned Ape Theory makes sense, and why life makes sense because of it, I guess. So anyway, sorry if this video kind of sucked. I think I'm a better storyteller than I am rambler. I get caught, just like taking thoughts different places, and I don't know if that works well for video. So let me know if you guys like this video, if you think I'm crazy or whatever, and tell me you want more stories. I don't know. I just wanted to get a video out while I was on the top of my head. And like I said, definitely hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you like my channel and what I'm talking about and trying to do here. I want to get like some Skype interviews going. I want to do that pretty soon. I don't know. At least one or two this summer, to talk to some folks and record it and have some cool conversations and make some good connections. So if you're interested in that, or you just want to reach out and say what's up, email helpfindtheothers@protonmail.com, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys.